Hey everyone, Jerrel Ramos here, Filipino-American fantasy author, and today I'm here to talk about one of my favorite things, and that is storytelling. Now, this video isn't really about me. I saw Larry the Musical, and if you haven't heard of it, um, there might be a huge chance you will later on. Now, am I a musical kind of guy? Sorta. I mean, I've acted in them, but when I think about folks who are in theater and really know their stuff, I'm really just not. I'm very selective about the pieces that I like in theater in general. I like straight plays a lot better, though, of course, musicals, when experienced live, are just very transformative experiences. And Larry the Musical is one of them to me. Now, this musical is a lot of things, but it is the life of Larry Itliong, who is a Manong. So he is of the generation of Filipinos who came in like the 30s, and he worked in the farms, and what he did was fight for better pay, for workers' rights, and he was a pivotal figure in the movements back in the 60s regarding the rights of farm workers. But he isn't really recognized for that. And one of my favorite things about this musical is drawing the invisibility that Larry experienced to the mainstream about his contributions to the labor movement, to the broader invisibility that Filipino Americans face in the US, even today. And that can be attributed to a lot of things. And what I love about this musical is that it touches on a lot of those aspects. And one of them is the richness of being a Filipino. There are so many islands, 7,000 of them. They even mention it in the musical, and how they all have different languages and they all have their differences. But here in America, we have to unite and fight for ourselves, and that is not a Filipino American exclusive thing. It is an American immigrant thing, and to see it done so beautifully from the perspective of a Filipino American hero, this is a huge step forward for Filipino American storytelling, Filipino American culture, and I can see this really resonating with Filams all over the country, and that is something I have always said that we needed. The Filipino American experience is something that is so rich with stories, and we do not really see it in the mainstream or honestly among each other. I'm going to use my very, I guess, limited theater experience to kind of break down the actual play without giving away too much. But the staging and the blocking and the intentionality behind it and the creativity behind the numbers genuinely surprised me, because there were a lot of risks that I enjoyed that they took with the music and with the scenes. And it is a sign of true storytellers when you see that on stage, and it is just not anything you've seen before. One of my favorite numbers has to be when they get into the myth of Larry and the way that he gets his legendary name. Oh my goodness, what they do with that was not anything I expected, and it was one of the most memorable moments of it. The cast of this musical just absolutely killed it. There is a meme that everyone kind of jokes about these days about like how if you're a Filipino and you're just doing karaoke and it's someone that's just doing amazing belts and doing crazy runs, and that is just your least talented Filipino, right? The talent on display was just phenomenal, right? And I think we all, us Filipino Americans, know that we have so many talented people among us, but to actually get them on stage and do a production and create music for them and create a story for them, that should be applauded, because you never see that ever. It is Filipino American history in itself. And what I mean by that is the feat of this musical even existing, it just can't be forgotten. Now, I do want to get into the parallel of Hamilton, an American musical. Now, this comparison is going to be coming up a lot, especially because it deals with the subject matter of a revolutionary who was kind of misunderstood and who is not given the credit they deserve. And there are moments in the play where I can tell that there was inspiration directly pulled from Hamilton. But I do want to caution the comparison between the two, and it's for a couple of reasons. But before I go into those reasons, I do understand why that parallel being put out there is something that is going to serve Larry the Musical in exposure. It's going to serve in telling people in an elevator pitch like what you can expect from the musical. But I do hope that when people see it, that they look at the differences more than the similarities, because what Larry the Musical does functionally for the people it's representing is entirely different than what Hamilton is and its story. On both hands, yes, you have immigrants who came to the U.S., they made a name for themselves, fought for themselves, created a legacy. But Larry Itliong's story has always been about not him at the center, but his community at the center. Hamilton is different because at the end of the day, that musical does have elements that can be looked back at as a little tasteless. And that might just be my personal opinion as someone who was a super fan of it back in the day and has seen the evolution of American politics happen in the past 8 years. It's been 8 years since that thing came out already. And I think it's time to, I guess, put that musical sort of behind us. The first reason that I think Larry the Musical stands on its own is because it does this thing where it actually represents a culture, but not to the point where it alienates anyone else. And there's a thing with representation and storytelling these days where I feel like where it falls flat, or where some undesirables will call it woke, is when it represents a culture, but it doesn't extract from it the core human element that comes from it. And Larry the Musical actually does an amazing job of showing what Filipino American is, but zooming it out and showing that it's not just a Filipino American story. It is a American story. It is a human story about following the people who came before you, and the necessity of struggle when you are part of an oppressive system. That itself is universal, and it does it so well. And what Hamilton does is it has to whitewash and remix a lot of things that were part of that time period that were not so favorable. Why do we have George Washington talk about slave ownership in like a line, right? The dialogue behind Hamilton has grown kind of past what its glory was. So that's why I think that we need to be careful with drawing that parallel a little bit. The second thing about Larry the Musical and Hamilton is that there is no rap in Larry the Musical. And Hamilton is, for better or for worse, known for its rap numbers. The music in Larry the Musical is much more anthemic. There's more variety. And the attitudes within the songs are just not that fiery thing that's going on with Hamilton. And when going into this, I wouldn't want to put the expectation of it being some kind of rap musical, because as cool as it would be to see Larry do a rap number, the music in Larry stands on its own, and oh my goodness, I need that soundtrack to drop ASAP. So just some closing thoughts. Larry the Musical is everything about Filipino American storytelling that I have been waiting for a long time. And I'm so happy that it's finally here, and I've been able to catch it during its first run here in San Francisco. But this really is just the beginning. A lot of where we are with Filipino American art right now will probably center a lot around visibility and inspiration, and drawing from the ancestry that we as Filipino Americans feel a little detached from. So this is a very important piece. It is a very necessary piece. And as Filipino Americans, we're not going anywhere. Anyway, I talk about writing and storytelling. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more. I'm just a guy with a mic and a word writing application. And you know what? The novel's going fine. We're closing in on that second draft, dude. Oh my God. And I'm going to take a long break from this story, and I cannot wait. So, anyway, have a good one. And whatever story you're telling, I hope it touches the hearts of many. Goodbye.